This is a Metro Weekly podcast, Crime Brief. We have two headlines to report about today. First, Maryland man sentenced to 48 years for killing trans woman. And then, queer couple found guilty of horrific murder of gay couple's son in California. First up, DeAllen Price, who pled guilty to fatally shooting Taya Ashton in her apartment, has been sentenced to 48 years in prison. By John Riley, on January 29, 2024. A 29-year-old has been sentenced to 48 years in prison for the 2021 slaying of a D.C. area transgender woman. DeAllen Price, of Capitol Heights, Maryland, pleaded guilty to charges of second-degree murder and use of a firearm in the commission of a crime of violence back in October for shooting 20-year-old Taya Ashton in her Suitland apartment upon learning of her gender identity. At a press conference about Price's sentencing, Prince George's County State's Attorney Aisha Braveboy said that he and Ashton had known each other and had been involved in an intimate relationship ahead of the shooting. As reported by NBC Washington, the day after Ashton's murder, Arlington County Police arrested Price for running from officers and trespassing on the metro tracks at the Pentagon City Station. Metro Transit Police and a K-9 officer searched the tracks and found a weapon that was later linked to Ashton's killing. According to charging documents, detectives had uncovered phone conversations between Ashton and Price on the night Ashton was murdered. Following his arrest, police were able to link a Gucci bag Price had in his possession to the description of a bag missing from Ashton's home. It was initially unclear what the alleged motive for the killing was, although several community advocates suggested that Ashton's transgender identity was a factor. But at sentencing, Price admitted to being involved with Ashton and shooting her in after an argument that escalated from the discovery that Ashton was transgender, according to Braveboy and Assistant State's Attorney Sherry Waldrop. Waldrop added that Price and his defense attorney suggested at the sentencing hearing that the shooting was unintentional, which Waldrop said she did not find credible, reports the Washington Post. "It's horrifying, it's unacceptable," Waldrop said of Price's actions at the press conference. "It is certainly not an excuse or justification for what happened to Taya. Taya's death was a real tragedy for our community, as well as for her family," Braveboy added. "Her death represents so much more, in terms of our level of tolerance in our community for people who want to express themselves and live their lives on their own terms. Anyone who chooses to do that should be respected and know that their lives are as valuable as anyone else's life." According to the Human Rights Campaign, at least 47 transgender and gender nonconforming individuals in the United States were killed in an act of violence in 2021. Last year, that number reached 32. Although estimates may undercount the true number of violent deaths due to trans individuals either being closeted or being misgendered by police and media outlets following their deaths. People of color accounted for 84% of trans and gender nonconforming people killed in 2023, with Black trans women becoming the primary victims in half of all total cases. Renee Lau, of Baltimore Safe Haven, a nonprofit serving Black transgender women and members of the LGBTQ community, told the Post that trans people are disproportionately affected by violence. "The murder rate, the suicide rate and the deaths because of overdoses in our community reaches greater numbers because of the fact that we are such a small community," Lau said.
Our second crime brief story today. Gerald, Rowe and Angel Anderson are facing life in prison for torturing and murdering 23-year-old George Randall-Saldivar. By John Riley, on January 30, 2024. A jury found a San Francisco man guilty of the torture and murder of a 23-year-old man with whom he and his transgender partner had a sexual liaison. According to testimony at trial, the victim, George Randall-Saldivar, met up with 52-year-old Gerald Rowe and 41-year-old Angel Anderson, a trans woman, for a sexual encounter on February 3, 2019. They met at Rowe's apartment at the Donnelly Hotel, which provides housing for low-income and homeless individuals. After engaging in sex, Anderson allegedly confronted Randall-Saldivar with a machete and tied him up, reports San Francisco-based CW affiliate KRON-TV. Anderson and Rowe then proceeded to torture Randall-Saldivar, placing a noose around his neck, with the rope tethered through a pulley device near the ceiling. Randall-Saldivar's hands were bound behind his back while Anderson and Rowe screamed at him, hit and punched him, sodomized him, assaulted him with pliers, and placed a bag over his head, according to charging documents. At trial, prosecutors alleged that after subjecting Randall-Saldivar to about 4 hours of prolonged torture, Rowe left the apartment to buy fentanyl. Upon returning home, he and Anderson injected the 23-year-old with a syringe full of a lethal mix of fentanyl and water before stuffing his body into a suitcase. Within about 90 seconds, the victim began to convulse and struggle to breathe, the San Francisco District Attorney's Office wrote in charging documents. Next, while still alive, Mr. Rowe and Ms. Anderson folded the victim into a large rolling suitcase, before zipping it up and waiting for him to die. Rowe reportedly ate junk food and played his guitar over the suitcase while he and Anderson waited to dispose of Randall-Saldivar's body. The following day, Rowe and Anderson donned disguises. They rolled the suitcase almost 2 miles from Rowe's apartment to the waterfront along Rincon Park, where they tossed the suitcase containing Randall-Saldivar's body into San Francisco Bay. The suitcase was found floating in the water 2 weeks later, on February 18, near Pier 39. According to the online news source SFist, 2 days after the body was discovered, Sacramento police alerted San Francisco police that Anderson, who had been arrested on an unrelated charge, had confessed to the murder while in custody. She was transported back to San Francisco and booked into jail for murder a week later. San Francisco police arrested Rowe a few days afterward. Anderson pleaded guilty to first-degree murder, torture, and poisoning. Rowe was charged with first-degree murder, torture, poisoning, and conspiracy, and ultimately convicted following a jury trial. Rowe is currently in custody awaiting sentencing, and faces life in prison without the possibility of parole. Anderson, who is also in custody, could be sentenced to 25 years to life in prison. Both sentencing hearings are scheduled for March 18. Randall-Saldivar was raised by a gay couple, Christopher Saldivar and Mark Randall. They adopted him at age 8, rescuing him from the foster care system, where he had been placed after being found wandering the streets of Chinatown due to his biological mother's inability to take care of him. In 2006, the Randall-Saldivar family was profiled in a Bay Area Reporter story focusing on Catholic Charities' opposition to allowing same-sex couples to adopt. Bevan Dufty, a former city supervisor and current member of the BART board of directors who was a family friend, told the San Francisco Chronicle in 2019 that Randall-Saldivar was a very gracious and kind person, even in trying circumstances. San Francisco District Attorney Brooke thanked members of the jury for finding Rowe guilty, expressing hope that his conviction would bring some small measure of solace to Randall-Saldivar's fathers. "We feel an overwhelming sense of relief for the victim's family who have waited far too long to receive justice in this case," Jenkins said in a statement. Mr. Rowe and Ms. Anderson's actions were heinous and a beloved son's life was lost far too early. Thanks for listening. Please like, follow and subscribe for more reports like this, and visit metroweekly.com for all our news updates.